So we could be looking at the end of BioWare, and let me explain why. So this comes from Bloomberg just not that long ago, that BioWare now has less than 100 employees. They had around 200 while they were producing Dragon Age of the Veilguard, and what ended up happening was, well, over their biggest peak was around 400, but they've fired a lot of people, or laid off is the nicer word for fired. They had 200 employees during Dragon Age of Veilguard's development, and here's what's happened. They've loaned or lent around 100 developers to other studios within EA. So, for example, EA Sports, I think, got like 50 employees from BioWare. So while Mass Effect 4 or 5 was in pre-production, they were pretty much loaning developers out, seeing as the developers were doing nothing. Then what ended up happening was EA made the decision to grab those 100 developers that they had pretty much loaned out to other studios and say, guess what? You can keep them. So now all 100 employees that used to work at BioWare are now full-time at different studios within EA. If that's DICE, if that's EA Sports, if that's Motion, that's all of them. And now it is official. BioWare only has 100 employees. It looks like, according to their source, that BioWare has officially become, or allegedly become, a one-and-done studio, or not one-and-done, but one project at a time studio, which means what they're doing is work on one game, finish that game, and then start another one. Unlike another studio like, let's say, Naughty Dog, that works on consistently probably around three games at a time to 2 games at a time. It seems like they're a one-man studio, so they just work on one project and then move on to another one, similar to Ben's studios over at PlayStation, where they work on one game and then they move on to the next, and then they move on to the next. They don't really work on 3 games at once. Usually what you've got is you've got 3 divisions, Division 1, 2, and 3. Division 1 usually working on the newest game, the closest game to release. Right now at Naughty Dog, that would be Intergalactic. They're working on that. They're getting that done. It's going into final development. Then we're going to game number 2, which is starting to get developers from Team 1, but they're working a little bit, but the game isn't quite near finished. It's still very far off, that's usually what Team 2 is working on. Then Team 3, which is the last studio, which their game isn't probably going to release for another 8 to 10 years. They're, well, probably longer. If we're talking Naughty Dog standards, maybe 15, 16. They're working on pretty much just the art of the game. They're just working on concepts, art, and kind of a little bit of story, but not really developing anything or any sort of pre-builds. That's pretty much how a 3-layered developer works. That's probably the shortest and easiest way I can really explain a three-lane developer. BioWare used to be a 3-lane developer a long time ago, back when Dragon Age Inquisition came out and it was a big game, and they started working on multiple games at once. I believe it was like Mass Effect 4, or it was that Mass Effect game. I forgot what it was called. Really, it was just not very good. And then it was, and working on Anthem and all that stuff. There used to be, and then EA really just started getting less employees. They were laying off, more layoffs and more layoffs and more layoffs. And then eventually, now they're just down to 100 employees. They went from being a 3-lane or 3-project studio to now a 1-project studio. And this is just, this is an example of just downsizing the studio. And now you might be thinking, okay, you've been yapping a lot about downsizing, but what are you talking about the end of EA? The reason why I say this could potentially be, not EA, the end of BioWare. The reason why I say this could be the end of BioWare is very, very simple. You look at their past 10 years. Now let's bring up what BioWare's done over the past 10 years. So over the past 10 years since 2014, or now 11 years ago, let's bring up, all of their games that they've released. They released Dragon Age Inquisition, which did well. It was successful. It won Game of the Year. It was actually the first Game of the Year, or the first Game of the Year that we know now. Then they wanted to cancel a game called Shadow Realms, which never saw release. It was meant to release in 2017, but got cancelled in 2015. Then they released Mass Effect Ampronition. I completely butchered that last bit, but it dropped and it was really buggy. It wasn't really too good. It was a big mess. It was a huge mess of a game. And it bombed. It flopped. Or I believe it did okay, but it was a bad look for BioWare. Then in 2019, they went on to release the infamous Anthem, which was going to be their newest IP in, I believe it was 10 years or something like that. They released it, and if you don't know the Anthem situation, I'll have like a video linked in the description going on what happened at Anthem or what happened with Anthem. But borderline, it was just a huge disappointment, and they promised a lot and delivered on none of it. Then they released Mass Effect Legendary Edition, which is just a remaster collection for the original Mass Effect games, which, once again, was really badly done. Horribly optimized, really bad. Seeing as it's just a remaster of 3 games, it really wasn't very good. They just butchered it completely. And people, like, begged people, don't let Mass Effect Legendary Edition be your first introduction to the Mass Effect series. And I beg you to this very day, don't let that be your introduction to the series, because I say with absolute faith, play the originals on PS3 on PC. They just run better. They're better in every way. The Legendary Edition is not good. It runs horribly. It is horribly optimized. It was maybe the worst thing they've ever done. And then after that, we've got Dragon Age of Velgard. And well, Mass Effect Ampertis, I'm completely butchered that. Released in 2017, it flopped. Shadow Realms got cancelled. Anthem flopped. Mass Effect Legendary Edition did okay, but again, it was a really bad look for the company, and it pretty much flopped. And then Dragon Age of Velgard didn't meet expectations, aka it flopped. You getting what I mean? Their last hit was over 11 years ago, which I don't think is ridiculous to say Mass Effect 4, Mass Effect 5, Mass Effect 4, let's just call it Mass Effect 4, is really their last chance. That's why I'm very confident this could be the end of BioWare. If they can't nail down Mass Effect 4, okay, I'm just going to say 5. If they can't nail down Mass Effect 5, I'm very, very confident this could be the end of BioWare. And some people will hate that. Some people will go into the comments and be like, you shouldn't say that. That's not right. And, it's not particularly true. But it is. EA's shown time and time again, every time a game over at BioWare has bombed, they've fired more employees, they've laid off more people. Every time a game's failed, they've laid off more people. Shadow Realms cancelled, they probably laid off more people. Mass Effect 4 failed, laid off more people. Anthem failed, laid off more people. Mass Effect Legendary Edition failed. You guessed it, laid off more people. Dragon Age of Velgard, you guessed it, they weren't quite laid off, they were moved, but they were taken away from BioWare. They don't work at BioWare anymore. They still work at EA, just not BioWare. They were moved, technically laid off from BioWare. They didn't lose their jobs, but they lost their job at BioWare. That's why I'm pretty confident if Mass Effect 5 doesn't succeed, I think that could be the end of BioWare. And before you say, but BioWare's such a big company, there's no way EA shuts them down, let's go over to Embracer Group. They owned a studio called Deep Silver Violent, probably saying that completely wrong, but Deep Silver. Deep Silver are the people behind Saints Row, Red Faction, Summoner, Free Space, and Descendant. They were the people behind Saints Row. Massive franchise, insane. Like, Saints Row, insanely big franchise. And in 2023, they were closed. Saints Row Reboot transferred to Gearbox closure. The studio was closed. So, anyone saying that BioWare wouldn't get shut down because of their size, that's so not true. It's been shown time and time again, no matter what size a studio is, they're always at risk of being shut down. Always. Doesn't matter what size you are, doesn't matter how big you are, what sort of legendary franchises you have. If you flop and you fail enough, you can get shut down, and they will shut you down. That's how investors work. If you're not making the money, there's only so long the legendary franchise stigma can really hold. And really what we're looking at is BioWare's last chance. I'm very confident in, I do feel bad for the people over at BioWare, but you caused your own demise. And that might sound really harsh, because it is harsh. It's really harsh, but you're the reason why your studio is in a really bad position. Because what you did was you fucked around, you made a really bad game, and you made a row of really bad games. You fucked up, you got cocky, you got lazy, and look what happened. There's almost none of you left, and you're getting to your last chance. This is BioWare's last chance. I hope they don't fuck it up because I like BioWare, but you have not been able to hit for 10 plus years. There's only so many times you can be called a legendary studio for games you released 10 plus years ago. You're getting to that point where it's nearing the end. And I know I'm sounding like a doomer, but it's true. You're nearing the end. And I tell you with absolute confidence, this isn't some sort of hate train. This isn't talking about the woke stuff. This isn't anything like that. This is simply saying this could be the end of BioWare. I want to hear how y'all feel about this being potentially the end of BioWare or their last chance. I do want to hear how y'all feel about this. Do you think I'm wrong? Do you think I'm right? What caused this? I know what caused this. Bad games. And yeah, I want to hear how y'all feel, and all good.